Morning, and we are in 107 still. We're finishing up here, and we're going to talk about this last little bit is about the presidencies of the and uh what it means to preside, I think. So the presidency of the council of the high priesthood shall have power to call other high priests, even 12, to assist as counselors. Thus, the presidency of the high priesthood and its counselors shall have power to decide upon testimony according to the laws of the church. He's basically saying he this is always goes to the presidency or the president of the church, but also you see the shadow of stake presidents as well. So the stake president has his um, his counselors, his two counselors, but then he'll call 12 others to assist in as counselors, um, as the high council. And we already talked, um, I believe last week, about the member councils, how um, they are held, especially on the stake level, where the High Council and the first or the stake presidency will meet, and so this works for that. But this one, they want you to know that the presidency of the high priesthood, um, and its counselors shall have power to decide upon the testimony according to the laws of the church, and that it's not their decisions are given. Not just on a stake level or a area level or anything like that. It's on the church level, and that's why they're called general um, authorities. And after this decision, it shall be had in remembrance no more before the Lord, for this is the highest council of the church of God, and final decision upon controversies in spiritual matters. Um, I had some of that marked on my phone. It hasn't updated here, but this when we're one of the things in the Come Follow Me to remember is what do you when how do you see Jesus Christ in all this? Because it's a lot of it, administration almost in the way this is given, but when we look closer, it has details, and especially this one. So once they've had a decided on something, it says decided upon testimony according to the laws of the church, meaning they're not just making decisions out of hearsay, they're having it out of testimony. How, what has been brought before them? What can they see? And what's the testimonies or the eyewitnesses say about whatever decision they're having to make? And after this decision, it shall be had in remembrance no more before the Lord. Now remember, the Lord said, if a man come before him and repent of the thing which he's done, the Lord will remember that thing no more. And if it's a serious sin, like that requires this amount of um, action, then the Lord Himself will remember it no more. And therefore, as in a church, in the church, that will be final. For this is the highest counsel of the Church of God and the final decision upon controversies in spiritual matters. So if they say um, that this person is repented and can um, go in and become fully active as a member, they can do that. Or for a time, they to need space to repent and um, be excommunicated or have his their certain responsibilities taken away um, at the time. That is final as well. But the Lord is there, and once this is made, He's not going to remember old things and say, "Oh yeah, that guy." I don't. Yeah, um, I remember when he was young and he did something like that. It's 20, 30 years ago or something. No, it's taken away. I hope that understands a little bit. But notice it says, and the final decision upon controversies of spiritual matters. What we're doing here is saying we're not going to be debating things for years to come just because someone's not happy with it. Once we made this decision, it's made. We'll take everybody's um, opinion or testimonies and witnesses and things like that, and we will make the most um, thought out and heartfelt decision at that point. But from that point, that should be the end of it. You shouldn't be arguing over things. And we've done that. I've watched that in the church several times. I always go back to the member councils because that is where you're going to see this in more um, contrast. I mean, it can be in just regular decisions of how something should be run. Say if there's something in the state that needs to be dealt with or done, how are we going to approach that? What are we going to do about it? You know, what is the problem and how can we overcome it? Um, we've had it from how do we solve um, a problem of having too small of a building for as large of a congregation that they have, um, to other decisions um, in the church. We, you know, and we come before in this highest council of the church, or highest council in the stake was what I've noticed, but this one would be highest council in the church, and they would um, and you work on those decisions. But then once that decision, what you'll usually have is two or three different opinions brought forth, and some of them can be totally contrasting in their views. But by the end of it, when the decision is made, usually it's unanimous. If not, usually they go back to the drawing board and go, okay, what are we missing here? But usually, even if you've had a contrasting point of view and the decision is different than what you had as a point of view, usually you come around and say, okay, yeah, I see how that is. Or um, you say, okay, yeah, it will still work, and I will support this decision. Um, anyway, I just thought I'd just throw that in a little bit with that. And it seems that this council system is something that works at the highest level. There's a lot of stuff on um, in the training for leadership on councils, uh, and the especially I don't know, I can't remember who did the last video. It might have been President Oaks, but I can't. Um, there was a few of them that actually did it, but it was they sat down. I think anyway they talked about councils. How do you run a council? How does it look? They had, I think, the Young Women's president, the Relief Society president, um, talking about how these councils work as well, um, so that the church knows that we run on councils. We run on um, how was it put once? It's um, I want to call it quantitative revelation. That's what comes to my mind, but I'm sure that that's not the word. But in my mind, quantitative meaning there's more than one person receiving revelation, and each one of them adds to the um, council, and that's why we have everybody um, have a voice in these things, so that they can add that inspiration. And it may be that there is two contrasting points of view, but it gives us a chance to have that revelation of what would be the best way forward and what the pitfalls might be of going forward in any way. There's hardly ever any decision that is um, black and white, right and wrong, um, completely. You know, you can uh, have one decision that sounds, yeah, that's a really good way to do it, and another will say, well, actually, this other way, um, you don't have, even if it's the best way to do it, there may have been something that is missed. Um, Going back to the idea of Ward who's outgrown their building or something, do you just say, okay, we get a new building right away, or do we get a porta cabin for some of the classes so that we can um, build up the ward a little bit longer before getting a new chapel? And what happens if you're going to get a new chapel? That means you've got to move out of your old chapel while they're building the new chapel. And where are you going to meet? You know, these sort of things are a lot of things you'd have to discuss. It's just an example, anyway. Going away from talking about just membership councils to see how other ways they may be involved. And I've never been, of course, in the highest council, so I can't imagine how they discuss worldwide um, things in the church. Let's move on. There is not any person belonging to the church who is exempt from this council of the church. That is important, and he's going to explain exactly what he means. Inasmuch as the president of the high priesthood shall transgress, this is the president of the church, the prophet, the seer, the revelator, he shall be had in remembrance before the common council of the church, who shall be assisted by 12 counselors of the high priesthood, and their decision upon his head shall be an end of controversy concerning him. So if somebody has a problem with the president of the church, they can bring it before the council. If it's that important, if it seems he's done, and I mentioned before, and I would say go to Church History Matters for more information, because I'm not saying that I've gone directly to the source with this, but um, Joseph Smith uh, did come before the council at least once, maybe a few times. Um, the one that uh, the Church History Matters um, mentions, I think Brother Griffiths is the one that talked about it, is the one with Sylvester Smith. Now, we talked about Sylvester Smith back in Zion's camp and how they really didn't get along, him and the prophet, very much, and really got on each other's nerves um, in a very heated way in front of the other camp members. Well, Sylvester Smith didn't feel that this was becoming the president of the church, and it probably wasn't, looking back. But they went before the council, the Kirtland Council, and pled their cases, and the council listened to testimonies. Remember, all of that council, um, oh, not all the, I was thinking of the 12 that wasn't called, and was still being called here, but the council, whatever council was called, listened to both sides, listened to testimonies, and then gave a decision. And the decision didn't say, oh, well, you're the president of the church, you can't be at fault here. He still had to apologize, and he had to make amends. And like I said, after that, Sylvester did serve in the 70, and I believe as a president, either of the 70 or one in a state presidency. But he also became Joseph Smith's scribe for a short time. Uh, and that's because of these councils. And Joseph Smith was really said, yeah, I'm not above anybody else here. Um, he was very happy to have. Yeah, I think he was interested to see how this council worked as well, and was very happy to have that experience. Um, and so nobody in a church, and that is what is important. So it says in 84, thus none shall be exempt from justice and the laws of God, that all things may be done in order and in solemnity before him, according to the truth and righteousness. This is one of the saving things. in the church is when these councils are done in truth and righteousness, when these councils are done, no one in the church is exempt from them, and no one can say, hey, I'm above this in any of the callings. There's always a council that they need to report to, you might say, um, that it is important that we know that that is the case, because that puts everybody in check. There is no hierarchy, where if something happens with somebody in authority, that there is no check on them, that members can't go and see someone about. Um, and as we've seen in other organizations, um, there has been a breakdown in many cases where there's people have gone unchecked. And I think this, way back in the 1900s, I guess is what it is, 1835, I believe, um, is a beautiful system of making sure that everybody is accountable. So we'll continue on again. Verily I say unto you, the duty of a president over the office of deacon. Now we're going right back. Let's go to the deacons first, and let's see what they need to do. Is to preside over 12 deacons, to sit in council with them, and to teach them their duty, edifying one another, as it is given according to the covenants. And we're going to repeat this again. Also, the duty of the president over the office of teachers is to preside over 24 of the teachers, and to sit in council with them and teach them their office as given in the covenants. Preside, sit in council, and teach. Also, the duty of the president of the priesthood of Aaron is to preside over 48 priests and sit in council with them to teach them the duties of their office as is given in the covenants. This president is to be a bishop, for this is one of the duties of this priesthood. So that is where we got the president over the priesthood of Aaron, and that is the bishop. Now, just a quick note before we go on. If you notice, the numbers go up double. So you have 20, 12, 24, 48, and then with the elders, it's 96. I don't really, numbers are not quite as important to me as I remember when I was younger, I'd go, okay, that's interesting. This is how, what if you hit 24? Do you? Um, it's not as important as the fact that the president presides, sits in council, and teaches. Again, the duty of the president over the office of elders is to preside over 96 elders and to sit in council with them and to teach them according to the covenants. Now, this has been emphasized much more um, today than I remember it being in the past. In the past, it's always been there because I've been in presidencies where we've gone, okay, we need to take this before the elders quorum and let them discuss this. Um, but recently, there seems to be more emphasis saying this elders quorum is a council. Sit in council with them. We often would on Sunday come in and have the lesson that needs to be given and do some business. You know, we're having a steak barbecue or a ward barbecue or an elders corn barbecue on this Friday. Everybody's invited, and and that's the business, and then right into a lesson taught by a teacher usually, um, out of whatever lesson book we're given at the time, and then we close with that. Um, but now we are to give opportunity to sit in council, brethren. We have brother so and so who has been ill, and is there somebody that can go on the home that his ministering brethren have been out there, but he could use some more help, and they've asked if we could do that. Anybody could use anybody able to contribute to this or help out in what ways? Let's discuss that. That sort of thing. Um, Making that up on the fly. So, however it looks, but it should be sit in council, um, and to teach them according to the covenants. This presidency uh, is a distinct one from that of the 70, and is designed for those who do not travel into all the world. And again, the duty of the president of the office of the high priesthood is to preside over the whole church and be like unto Moses. So now we're talking about the president of the church or the presidency. Um, well, no, the president of the office of before we were talking about the presidency, but he is to preside over the whole church. And behold, here is wisdom. When it says here is wisdom, we should listen a little closer. Yea, and this is what he's to be. All my markings not on here, so but I don't want to go back and update to get all these markings right now. So you're getting the more bland text. I like to have them highlighted so you can see in these highlights what um, I'm emphasizing and why. Um, I really don't color my scriptures as much as um, you see on here, but I have recently. Now they are, I must admit, because it helps emphasize certain things while we're discussing these things. Um, and also I can emphasize it remembering why am I emphasizing that word or something like that. So here's wisdom. This is the wisdom that the president of the church is to be a seer, a revelator, a translator, and a prophet, having all the gifts of God which he bestows upon the head. Did I read that right? Let me read. Having all the gifts of God which he bestows upon the head of the church. So prophet, seer, revelator. That's the ones we hear about. Then there's also translator. but we don't usually say that. Maybe it doesn't roll off the tongue as much. Also, we don't see that as much. I still believe that any head of the church is a translator as well, but we don't raise our hand to support him as a translator as much as a prophet, seer, and revelator. Joseph Smith translated several things, and so I think that's one reason why that was put in there. But also, I believe that prophets do have that ability to translate, or at least to bring to light those things around them if need be. Um, and it is according to the vision showing the order of the 70 that they should have 7 presidents to preside over them and choose them out of the number of the 70. So here in the 70, we have 7 presidents. And the 7th president of these presidents is to preside over the 6. And these 7 presidents are to choose other 70 besides the first 70 to whom they belong and are to preside over them, and also other 70 until 70 times 70 if the labor in the vineyard of necessity requires it. So 70 is one of those. You get 3 of the presidency of the church, you got 12 apostles, and that's the quorums. That's how much you have. But for 70s, they can be as numerous as necessity requires. Now, they used to have 70s in the wards that were basically ward missionaries, but they were ordained as 70s, and this is how, for a long time, even when I was young, we had some 70s in there, and we'd have missionary activities uh, um, that was hosted by the 70s. Uh, but they changed the definition in a way, I guess. I don't know how to put this. I just remember President Hinckley getting up and talking about the different organization of how the 70s would work. The 70s are to be a general authority, not a ward authority or a stake authority. It is a general authority, um, which simply means that their authority is over a general um, area of the church, not a specific ward or branch or something. So we have the area authority 70s now, and they work under the direction of the 12 apostles. And we can have as many area authorities as we need. We open a new area if there is a need there. Um, if, for instance, England um, got so and such an influx of members in that to the point where they needed to start thinking about how they're going to regulate the church there, they may make another area. Um, uh, that is usually how they'll do it, and then those area 70s will be a general authority that works um, in that area at that time and may be called to other places, but usually I think they serve in that one area, and they will have the rights and privileges of setting apart state presidents and so forth, um, under the direction of the 12. So they, under the direction of the 12, can do the interviews and all the other things and get the inspiration in that way. And so the 70s are to have those 70s be able to just grow as much as possible as the church grows. You still have only 12 apostles. You still have only the um, three um, presidents of the first presidency. Um, but the 70 can keep growing. And uh, and these 70 are to be traveling ministers unto the Gentiles first and also unto the Jews. Like I said, I've got all this marked and yet it's not showing up today. So maybe next time. Whereas other officers of the church who belong not unto the 12, neither the 70, are not under responsibility to travel among all nations, but to travel as their circumstances shall allow. Notwithstanding, they may hold as high and responsible offices in the church. Um, Interesting how they say that, but it is basically saying, the 70 are there to travel, and so are the 12. But for most people, their responsibility is just over the area that they're in. They don't need to be traveling unless, um, for some reason, they need to, according to the circumstances. Wherefore, now let every man learn his duty to act in the office in which he is appointed in all diligence. What a commandment there, to let every man learn his duty and to act in the office in which he is appointed in all diligence. What we've learned over the last few days is this is your duty and this is how you act on that duty. And now we're given this as we learn and we act in that office. And where are we going to learn? Well, from the presidents of the quorum, because they're going to teach you and you're going to be able to sit in council with them, but you still need to act on it as well. He that is slothful shall not be counted worthy to stand, and he that learns not his duty and shows himself to be uh, uh, oh, I'm sorry, I said to be, shows himself not approved and shall not be counted worthy to stand. Even so, amen. So we learn our duty and hope you've learned something this week. We act in the office with all diligence, and I hope you can have a wonderful day and act in all diligence in whatever calling you may have. And we'll see you tomorrow.